And Ken Thompson, wherever you go, we should be there. Let everybody know what he did today.
Alrighty, moving right along. Les?
Speaking, right here.
Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Okay, so you are here for like 15 minutes to talk about O2drops.com. And I just want to make also the point that you are an activist. You're involved in 9/11 Truth and HR14.org. So,
exactly.
So talk about these O2 drops and what the health benefits of them are.
Yeah, absolutely. O2 drops is a oxygen and trace mineral liquid supplement. That's it. Okay. They're concentrated, stabilized oxygen in a liquid form, and you just put drops under your tongue and it goes directly into your bloodstream. Now, what's the benefit of oxygen? Well,
what's the benefit of oxygen?
Right, as a supplement, of course, it's the single most ingredient needed for life itself, number one. And Catherine, it'd be interested to know, I hope everybody would be interested to know that there is a decrease in the levels of oxygen in the atmosphere. And this is due to pollution, mostly, and also deforestation over the years. And it's actually quite serious. I'm reading from an article in theguardian.com where it's quoting several scientists on the measurements that they can do of levels at like prehistoric times or from 10,000 years ago, comparing now. So most scientists accept that oxygen levels in the atmosphere in prehistoric times average around 30 to 35% oxygen in the atmosphere, compared to only 21% today. However, it's even less in densely populated, polluted cities and areas where there's lots of industry. As low as 15% or lower. So it used to be 30 to 35% in the atmosphere, down to 21% today due to pollution, even lower in cities and areas of high industrial activity. That's very curious.
I wanted to also point out, because I've been advocating for fitness for most of my life, and I've been practicing yoga and meditation since the early 80s. And I was always trying, because most people don't breathe properly, like they don't belly breathe. And
right.
They, over time, and as people get older and they get stressed, they don't breathe as deeply and as, belly breathing as they should. So their breath is more shallow, which is also decreasing the amount of oxygen that is able to circulate around the body so the body essentially becomes, like, I think of the body as, like a small system that we live in. And so like we talk about places like Gaza. So that's like the part of the planet that's not getting any circulation, that's being, retaliated against, or is the part of the larger body that's paying the price for the inefficient system. And so when you scale it down to the level of the body, it's basically the same thing. You're doing the same thing to your own body. You're there's designated parts of your body that are basically the sacrifice zones, to use Chris Hedges' term, that are literally being eliminated from the equation.
Well, it's interesting that, first of all, from what I've read, that even deep breathing, even normal breathing or deep breathing, which obviously if we can do a lot of deep breathing, it's beneficial. However, it's by increasing our oxygen intake through stabilized oxygen liquid, or there's more like the ozone therapy, where you take it intravenously, things like that. It's all beneficial. Now, the most efficient though is just the drops, because it's a little bottle you carry with you, and in the with O2 drops, you take them about 3 times a day. You can continuously, this is what I like, you can continuously flood your cells with oxygen. And it's, as far as the sacrifice zones, the brain requires 25% of the body's oxygen. And of course, the skin requires a large portion of our oxygen. And then the organs, all the major organs, the immune system, absolutely. And what I found from taking the drug myself is also an increased lung capacity. And now people who have asthma, for instance, they are absolutely experiencing great benefits, because it eases the whole capacity to breathe. And there's many, many, many more benefits. I hope people will grab a pen and paper, because I want to give a couple of websites, okay? And now another point here about cancer here is very important, which is Dr. Otto Warburg, who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine back in 1931, discovered that cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. Cancer cells die in the presence of oxygen in a high alkaline environment. That's what the O2 drops does. It creates a high alkaline environment in our body, as opposed to high acidity. This is all about pH balance. Okay? Very important. And folks that have issues like with chronic pain, for instance, would benefit. Skin problems, low energy, fatigue, and even, believe it or not, like anxiety and stress. The factors of stress in our lives here create a huge amount of free radicals in the body, and they're very, very damaging. And the oxygen will destroy the free radicals, which is hugely important, especially in our environment and with our highly stressed lifestyle. So I would urge everybody to go to this website that has about 50 testimonials, phenomenal testimonials. Ready? It's www.giveyourbodythebest.com. All one word. Giveyourbodythebest.com. Now, I also would give a general website, which is very informative, that has several PDF files with testimonials and technical research. By the way, O2 Drops has been independently researched by over 24 medical laboratories and clinics. Okay, and you'll find some of this information, as well as testimonies from athletes, because athletes find huge benefits from increased oxygen in their system for stamina and also for recovery. So, for instance, if you do any workout exercises, running, jogging, you name it, you will definitely experience a great benefit. And the website with this general information is o2opportunity.info. That's o2opportunity.info. Now, next, I just want to spend a few minutes here. We don't have much time, but folks, there's also an affiliate opportunity, meaning there's a great need today, Catherine, for people to recognize the economic challenges that we're all faced with the economy, with the fact that the average median wage has barely risen since 1979, while the cost of living has skyrocketed. We have 76% of people living paycheck to paycheck, don't even have $1,000 in savings. I could go on with many similar details. So I just would say this. If you're sick and tired of that scenario, it's not going to change unless you make some changes. Well, here's a way to become an affiliate of a process that just has to do with referral marketing. You get paid for referrals. And it's that simple. I would like people to consider that, and they can contact you directly, Catherine, or go to your website, which is at o2ww.com/authentic health. That's o2ww.com/authentic health. And if anybody's just interested in ordering O2 drops for themselves, they can also do so at this website, which is odrops.com/authentic health. Okay, one more time, o2drops.com/authentic health. And if anybody's interested in, overcoming that financial obstacle of being able to get ahead, get out of debt, pay off all your bills, and then have extra to save towards future retirement someday, or even within the next year if you'd like to, because the income is unbelievably lucrative and can be accomplished in a matter of months in terms of reaching a level where most people can literally retire. The average per capita income is $28,000 a year. It comes to about 2,800. Around 2,300 a month. Well, we have a 90-day plan to $10,000 per month, and you can just get in touch with you or myself to get the details. And you would like to give your email or contact info, Catherine?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. You wanted me to give my contact.
Your contact info, your email for people to get in touch who would like to know more.
My email is catspaws, CATSPAWS 44 @gmail. And people, right, the website to go to is o2drops.com/authentic health.
Right. That's to order the product. Exactly. And if people like to see more about the company and the opportunity, there's o2ww.com/authentic health. And it really comes down to this, folks. Imagine if there was a store that you really liked, had a great health product, and they told you, we'd really like to have your help here. We're expanding, and if you were to send us 2 friends in the next 10 days who also purchase and have a product yet, and they do the same within 10 days, refer 2 friends, That repeats, in a matter of 90 days, we're going to pay you a total of $10,000 as appreciation, a token appreciation for your referral, for helping us expand. Now, another interesting point is if you do the 2 referrals within 10 days and that repeats, you won't even have to come out of pocket for your product order, for your purchase. Therefore, you're zero out of pocket, yet because of the accumulation of business volume, we will pay you $10,000. And in this case, it would be 90 days from now. You will have earned that. You will be earning $10,000 per month. Now, if some store owner told you that, how quickly would you say, absolutely, I'm getting out of here, I'm going to go get started right now. Matter of fact, I can get 2 referrals here within a week, within 2 days. That's what's possible, folks. And
can you explain real quick, because it's 7:30 and the next guest is due on, just quickly that it's not a pyramid scheme.
Oh, good, yeah. Pyramid schemes are illegal, and technically, if there were no product involved, people just said, put in $1,000, and you can get others to put in $2,000, like that. That's a pyramid scheme. But this is a model of business that's been around since the 1950s and has created billions of dollars of revenue worldwide. And so, no, as a matter of fact, if you ask yourself at your job, who makes the most money? And how about everything else down the line? And if you start to get that picture, that's a pyramid. This is opposite.
Okay, so we're pretty much out of time, Les. So so people can find more information at giveyourbodythebest.com and o2drops.com/authentic health.
Right. And I would urge him to contact you through your email, and then we can set up a conference call and go into further details. And, that way we'll make sure that everything, all the information is there for you and fully understood.
So thank you very much, Les Jamieson. And, periodically we'll check in with you and, talk more about this because, health really is the most important thing. It really is your real wealth, not just physically, emotionally and spiritually also.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, you're welcome. Good night.
Take care.
Okay, I am going to now move into my next and last guest is Jennifer Loewenstein. So just bear with me while I dial her up. All right, she's going to speak about the attack.
Hello?
Jennifer?
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me on Organic News on Awake Radio.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm just going to, you are a human rights activist and faculty associate in Middle East Studies at Penn State University. You were stressing the importance of 2 recently released books in understanding what's happening as far as the attacks in Brussels. And the book you mentioned is Patrick Coburn's newest book, Chaos and Caliphate, Jihadis and the West in the Struggle for Middle East, and Charles Glass's book, Syria Burning.
Right.
You said just the other day, turn on television news or read the media reports on the Brussels attacks, and what you hear are people talking about the trauma caused by such attacks, the civilian casualties, the sadistic targeting of crowded public places, the fear that is feeding Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment. How can we stop these horrors? We will have to sacrifice civil liberties in order to protect the citizens of a given nation in order to guarantee security. So yeah, let's start talking about that particular point.
Oh, well, what I was saying in that paragraph was that that's one of the many things that people are discussing, that we will have to sacrifice some of our civil liberties in order to stay secure, when that shouldn't really be the point of discussion. We shouldn't have to sacrifice any of our civil liberties.
Right.
What we need to do is try to understand why the bombings in Paris and Brussels and elsewhere are happening.
Right.
Because once we understand the source of the bombings, why they're happening, and once we make a decision, and sit down and talk about it, not only have the politicians talk about it and the media, but having the general public get access to this information, I think many people will start to understand that toughening security measures and tightening, restrictions on entering the country, being at airports, none of that has to happen. What has to happen is that we have to understand our role in the Middle East over the past century and how that has led to a series of developments over the decades that have made certain groups of people want to hit us back.
Right.
I think that has to be understood.
Right. Why do these people want to hit us back?
Well, I can just give you a brief analogy first, and that is if you have a bully beating up some kids on the block repeatedly, again and again and again, ultimately those kids on the block are going to hit back. And that is analogous to what the United States and the UK and France have been doing in the Middle East since the end of the Second World War. Before that, for Britain and France, we've gone into that region. We reconstructed it on our own terms after defeating the Ottoman Empire in the First World War. We redrew the map of the Middle East. We created the states that exist today. And then first Britain and France, and then the United States, after the Second World War, began to extend its influence in the region for a number of reasons. One of them, most people know, has to do with oil, or had to do with oil. That's still an issue. Another had to do with our geostrategic interests. During the Cold War, we wanted to control the area, in part because we didn't want our adversary, the Soviet Union, to have greater influence in the region. Nobody ever talks about it, but the U.S. was also competing with Britain and France for a larger share of influence within the region after the Second World War. And it's not just a matter of what great power politics were doing, it's that as we were doing that, we were stirring up and destabilizing people's lives, not just the governments or administrations of these countries, of Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. We weren't just having an effect on power politics, we were having a direct and often devastating effect on the lives of everyday people living in those countries. And those effects, the cumulative effect of our involvement over there has been to destroy Iraq, and first of all, to destabilize the region by supporting Iraq against Iran in the Iran-Iraq War of 1980 to 88, to side with certain parties in the Lebanese civil war as Lebanon self-destructed. We're doing that. We're involving ourselves now in the Syrian civil war. I mean, I could make a list going back to at least 1953 with the overthrow of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, that, you know, in each country, in almost every country in the Middle East, the United States has meddled in the internal affairs of that country. And in many, many cases, in far too many cases, the end results have been destructive, economically, socially, politically, and in the very basic sense of the death of hundreds of thousands of human beings.
And the truth, they're not always over there trying to, deter or stop terrorism like they say that they are. I mean, they're over there for other reasons like natural resources and, the corporations make an awful lot of money. The weapons industry makes an awful lot of money off of these conflicts.
Well, the military conglomerates make an enormous amount of money selling arms to the various nations. And when you have arms, you tend to use them. And so we've got this fire burning out of control in the Middle East, and what the proxy powers are doing, what Russia and the United States and Britain and France are doing in the Middle East, is throwing more fire on the fire. That's not going to solve the problem. And I don't understand why these great powers don't understand that you don't fight fire with fire. It just gets worse. What I have to wonder about is what the real underlying goals are, because there must be some people in the current Obama administration, in the State Department, in the Pentagon, who understand full well that putting more troops into Iraq, as we're about to do, having special ops forces in Syria, using airstrikes every day against ISIS, this isn't going to put a stop to radical extremists who call themselves Islamic jihadis. It's not going to put a stop to them. It's going to increase them in number. Right. It's going to make people angrier. It's going to make the region less secure. And that's going to, in turn, make countries like the United States or Belgium or France or Germany or England also less secure. So there's a logical progression here that, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. I think if you pulled anyone off the street and said, here's the situation, this fighting is out of control and we need to stop it, that person is going to say, that person is unlikely to say, well, we need to go in there and fight harder. That's not going to solve the problem. We have to start somewhere. In my view, we have to start by getting out of the area militarily. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to make the point that in the documentary Drone, they point out that because there's so many civilians that get killed. That's what's that also helps to create more terrorists, because they're just killing innocent people.
Well, the drones are little more than an extension of American military power. Instead of having people,
Yeah.
This is what we call the "we kill and you die" form of war. We can protect ourselves and not have any body counts because we can now send over mechanized drones to do our killing for us. They're not precision killers because, as you just said, hundreds of civilians, if not thousands, have been killed. The people of these countries know full well who's behind this. They know it's the United States to a great extent. There's no reason why people should question why are they anti-American. Just read the history. Just don't listen to just the mainstream media because it isn't going to dwell on America's faults. It's going to keep us talking about how sad it is that these people have died, how crazy the terrorists must be, what drives a person to blow himself up with a suicide bomb, what can we do to stop the flow of migrants into the region where terrorists may have infiltrated. All these questions are beside the point. The questions that we need to answer is how can we de-escalate a situation that is beyond control and one that we paved the way for in the first place. American policy in Iraq paved the way for the creation of Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and Al-Qaeda morphed into ISIS.
Right.
We didn't create those groups. We created the conditions that gave rise to those groups. Now, when I say that we can't win this war, or whatever you want to call it, militarily, and that we have to pull out militarily, I'm not saying that, if we just leave, ISIS is going to put away its guns. ISIS is a vicious, deeply distorted kind of cult, Islamic cult that uses the trappings of Islam to cover up a kind of neo-fascist organization that is simply a killing machine, like a killing conglomerate. ISIS isn't going to throw away its guns if the United States pulls out militarily. I tend to be a pacifist, but I also recognize that, people in Iraq and elsewhere are going to become the victims of ISIS if it's not fought back. If there aren't armies, if there isn't some kind of military protection. That's where we've gotten to. I don't think it ever had to get that far. But we need to have people who live in the states in the Middle East forming united fronts against ISIS and offering the citizens of the countries in the Middle East a better future if we want to defeat ISIS. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what is it? 15 years, 14 years of conflict, and where's the improvement? This is what I don't get. There's clearly no improvement in these organizations. First it started with Al-Qaeda supposedly were responsible, supposedly, because I highly question the official story of 9/11. And, even over time, they said that Al-Qaeda had gotten larger since the U.S. went over into Iraq, which was a country that had nothing to do with 9/11.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right. Al-Qaeda didn't exist in Iraq. And in fact, if we were really serious about attacking a country for the spread of Islamic extremism, we would have gone after Saudi Arabia. But instead, Saudi Arabia is one of our key allies in the region. So there's something very wrong with our decision. There was something very wrong with our decision to target Iraq. And we have to ask ourselves, why did the U.S. go after Iraq instead of Saudi Arabia? Because Saudi Arabia is really, 19 of the hijackers were Saudi or something like that. 17 out of the 19 they were mostly Saudi citizens who carried out 9/11. And I don't think people understand this. The other thing you were saying, 15 years, approximately 15 years this has been going on. Let me tell you and your listeners, this has been going on for well over 15 years. So you can go back into the history of the modern Middle East, back before the 1950s, back into the 1930s with the establishment of Saudi Arabia. You can keep going back, and what you see, it's not a straight line of getting worse, but not only are we not getting, is the situation not getting better, the situation, especially in the last 3 decades, has gotten worse.
Right.
In almost every region of the Middle East. So yes, it's time for people to sit down and say, we must be doing something wrong. And this isn't getting better, it's getting worse.
And then, just the last sentence in the first paragraph that I read, we will have to sacrifice civil liberties, So, right. So, we need the people to donate their civil liberties in order for us to keep doing something that doesn't work and we're making it completely worse. The very thing that the government should be protecting of the people, they're actually asking the people to surrender. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, we're the country of freedom and democracy, but in order to have quote unquote security for our citizens, we need to essentially take away civil liberties so that we can make sure that any individual coming into our country is not a terrorist. First of all, that's impossible to do. Secondly, there are many, many, many Americans who already live here and who are American citizens that are attracted to organizations like ISIS for a variety of reasons that, involve an entirely different discussion. And what I said at the very beginning of this show was that we don't have to sacrifice any civil liberties for the American people, and if we would solve the problem the way it ought to be solved.
And we're actually, it's our own government that's asking the people to give up the very thing. It's not the terrorists that are taking away the civil liberties and the freedoms of the people in this country. It's its own government that's doing it. So who's the real...
Yeah, well, it comes down a lot to the word security. Whenever I hear politicians talking about security, I'm very suspicious of that word because it's not security for the American people. It's security for the elites, for the American government, for corporations.
Right.
The American people can be sacrificed in wars. They can be sacrificed to, lack of unions. They can be sacrificed to poverty because of low minimum wages. Basically, the average American is cannon fodder in the eyes of the U.S. government and the military. I don't think there is any genuine concern on the part of any of the key politicians in Washington for the average U.S. citizen. Their concerns are strategic, their concerns are economic, their concerns are military, and when they talk about security, they're talking about securing their own interests.
Exactly. The people got sold out. That was clear during the crash of '08 when the bankers got bailed out and the people got Zippo.
Yeah, well, that's a very good example, and that was right here in the United States. When we start talking about foreign policy, the situation gets a lot more complicated And it is difficult for me, for example, to go on the air and try to explain some of what's going on by referring to recent history, because so few people know or understand recent modern Middle Eastern history. They don't understand why or where these jihadis came from. Why are there people who are attracted to ISIS? Why did ISIS spring up in the first place? Why did Al-Qaeda spring up in the first place? And until we can provide answers to these questions that are based in fact and in documentary evidence, people are going to go on thinking it's just because they hate us for our freedom and democracy. And that has nothing to do with it. People who blow themselves up using suicide bombs are not doing so because they want our freedom and democracy. It's totally illogical.
We don't have any more freedom and democracy.
Well, one can argue that too. But somebody doesn't blow himself up because he hates us for our freedom and democracy. He blows himself up because he is so tired of being battered to death and having his people or his land or his resources stolen and destroyed, that he hits back. Well, the United States has been a bully in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world, and it picks on people and it picks on states. And, I realize this is not a black and white issue, but for the purposes of trying to make it clear to listeners, you can't have a superpower trying to extend its dominance over regions of the earth by oppressing hundreds of millions of people and then expect them to just sit there and take it. Eventually there's going to be a reaction. And there has been a reaction on many different levels.
You're making the very same point. The segment that I did in the first hour. I mean, it's a scaled down version and like it's a local issue, but not really, because it's pretty systemic, like throughout this country. With an NYPD cop who had fired his guns, supposedly accidentally, which killed Akai Gurley in a stairwell back in 2014, and the district attorney was recommending no jail time for this cop that was found guilty of manslaughter in a court of law. And the assemblyman last week during the press conference and it was a crowded press conference, and he said the same thing that you're saying, that the system just can't keep doing things, to the people and pushing the people and then not expecting this blowback. And then, because the commissioner, the Bratton, was calling this assemblyman who said the assemblyman said the words, violence is going to be inevitable, but it's because of violence being done to the people. And then when the people have a normal, natural response, and
suddenly we're surprised. How dare they hit back? What on earth are we? What do we expect? What does anyone expect? If you go smash up somebody's house, you bulldoze it, you break all the windows, you kill all the people who live in it, then the neighborhood is going to not like you very much. And it's up to you to go in and fix it. Not on your terms, but on their terms. And that's, I think, a good analogy for what the United States did to Iraq. It ripped Iraq to shreds. And, people in the neighborhood, both within Iraq and in the vicinity, in Syria, in Jordan, in the Gulf countries, in Turkey, people are reacting to what have been decades-long policies that are not helpful to people in the region.
I mean,
They hurt them.
yeah, the powers that be have an agenda, and the public is not included. They need to understand that. And I don't.
Well, we tend to whip up fear, and if you turn on the nightly news after a bombing like the one in Brussels, most Americans who watch the news are only going to see the worst side of, or the worst aspects of the Middle East. They're not going to see families and children and teachers and shopkeepers and kids going to school and grandparents spending time and weekends with their kids. And we're not going to see the image of daily life in any country in the Middle East. We're going to see violence. That's what gets media attention. So you have people in this country who have only got Fox News perceptions of who these Middle Easterners are or what Islam is. And, that has an effect on us here. We have very warped notions about who the people of the Middle East are, as if they're one homogeneous group of people in the first place. They're not. The Middle East is a very, very diverse region, ethnically, religiously, geographically, socially, politically. To try to group it all together or lump it together as one region with a religion of violence that creates terror, this is indoctrination and mythology.
So it sounded like you were saying that the media is almost like the military and the weapons industries that just profits off of the perpetuation of this misinformation, for ratings, for for whatever their agenda is that is other than the truth and informing people and
right. Well, I don't
peace.
like to oversimplify, but definitely our mainstream media outlets are not letting in. They're not letting in many of the discussions that we should be having. Why are these attacks taking place? What started Al Qaeda? What conditions existed so that ISIS would come into being? ISIS is not an Islamic phenomenon. ISIS, the organization, has killed more than 250,000 people who are Muslims. I mean, Muslims are the main target of ISIS, not Europeans, not Americans, not Christians. Muslims. They're the ones who died in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, because of groups like ISIS that are absolutely insane. And we have to understand, where did that insanity come from? How was it unleashed? What were the social, political, economic conditions that created a world where ISIS could be born? And in order to find the answer to that question, it's imperative that people start to understand what the U.S. role has been in that region for the last 6 or 7 decades.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Jennifer Loewenstein, a human rights activist and faculty associate in the Middle East Studies at Penn State University. And you referenced Patrick Coburn's newest book, Chaos and Caliphate, Jihadis and the West in the Struggle for Middle East, and Charles Glass's Syria Burning. Do you have a website or anywhere that people can find your work or writings?
Most of my writing as now is in the print edition of the Counterpunch magazine.
Okay.
I've had 5 or 6 articles come out in that magazine. It's the print edition. And I am working right now on getting those articles online so that they're easier to reference.
Thank you.
That's where you can find most of them, yes.
Thank you again, Jennifer Loewenstein. And that's why people need to listen to alternative media like organic news here on Awake Radio, because
True.
that other stuff is just, I call it GMO media.
That's very good. Genetically, well, something modified information. I don't know what the best acronym would be, but it certainly isn't probative, substantial news.
So have yourself a great night, and thank you for joining me, Jennifer.
Thank you very much
Loewenstein.
for having me on.
Okay, have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that wraps it up for this Tuesday, March 29. April 4th, they're going to be out here in the city for rallies for Akai Gurley. Also, April the 14th at 320 J Street in Brooklyn is the sentencing for Peter Liang, the NYPD cop who took the life of Akai Gurley. Please, again, go to Awake Radio and the #1 YouTube channel. See my podcast. Please support this kind of media that gives you the truth. We're not beholden. We don't take any. We're like Bernie Sanders. We don't take corporate money. And also my YouTube channel, April Waters with 2 T's. Thank you and good night.